Hey, hello everyone, and welcome back to Demystifying Post-Productions webinar. And in this session, we will be still talking about managing color. And we've learned previously about ACES CG and ACES workflow overall, the concept. I think the very first sessions of this webinar was done by Noseman, and I think he kind of like how do you call it, explain the basic concept of ACES and ACES color management framework. And then the last two sessions, we've learned about ACES CG and its uses in Cinema 4D with Redshift, and also some compositions in After Effects. And I hope my sounds is coming through. Can you guys hear me fine? Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, and in today's sessions, we will shift gear and we will move into color grading. And let's see how can we set up ACES workflow inside a DaVinci Resolve color grading environment. But before we move on, I would like to point you out to the recording of this sessions, of the previous sessions, of course. If you didn't manage to show up last sessions and you want to catch up, you want to watch the recording of that sessions, you can find them in our YouTube channel. You can simply go to YouTube and search for Maxon Training Team. And under playlist and Demystifying Post-Productions webinar, you can go through all the recorded webinar. And yeah, we also have certifications, by the way, at Maxon. We have 3 types of certifications if you like to. There's elementary knowledge base, knowledge test that you can take if you feel like you want to test yourself, and you can use it as a memory jogger. And there are 2 more serious certifications for Cinema 4D if you would like to, and those are the comprehensive certifications and also the trainer certifications if you would like to be a Cinema 4D trainer. And just bear in mind though that this Cinema 4D certifications is not a simple multiple choice. It's more like a real case scenario. And I think by passing that certifications, you'll be an expert. It means that you're an expert in Cinema 4D. All right, that's enough about the certifications. Feel free to check the future events in maxon.net/events. And don't forget, if you haven't get your free t-shirt, do so. In the handout sections of the webinar panel, there is a PDF file, and you can use the link and use the password color ACES to enter the website and get your free t-shirt. And bear in mind though that the code only valid for 1 order, and it's only valid for the t-shirt under Ask the Trainer sections. Alrighty. So let us jump into the sessions and let us talk about ACES in DaVinci Resolve. So let me minimize this, and let us start the sessions by understanding some color theory. So let me switch my webcam off so you can enjoy the full screen. Right. Now, to understand ACES, let us understand what color is, right? We used to think that color is property of light, but in fact, light doesn't have color. It has spectral wavelength. And scientists has mapped out the spectral wavelength into an easy to understand graph called spectral power distributions. And notice that different light source contains different wavelength. And if you also notice, daylight, the one here, has the most complete spectrum if you compare it among the other source of light. And color is actually sensations created in the human mind caused by particular spectral power distributions. Although in fact, this is where start to get interesting. Different spectral power distributions can cause the same sensations in our mind, even though they are not the same wavelength. And this phenomenon is called metamerism. And metamerism is crucial to how televisions and other display technology works. So a display only has RGB, or red, green, and blue light output, and it doesn't have the full spectrum of light that exists in the real world. And display and TVs are creating the illusion of colors and can stimulate the same thing in our mind as the full spectrum of light that exists in the real world. So honestly, it is hard to spot the difference of the footage on our well-calibrated display to the scene lit with different light spectrum that produce the same stimulus in human eye-brain combinations. And this is what we call the metamers of each others. So for example, if you go out in the forest, for example, and you see the foliage, and today's autumn, and you see like this brown foliage, red foliage, and it may trigger certain perceptions to you. And this same perceptions can also be triggered by you just watching a footage of that forest in your televisions or in your display, right? And the thing that you need to bear in mind is that not everyone have the same spectral sensitivities and that can create issues. So the existing light out there in the real world consists of gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, infrared, radio waves, and in between, just the small narrow band is the visible spectrum that we can see as color. And those ranges, the range of spectrum ranges from 380 nanometer to 780 nanometer, plus and minus, because not everyone have the same sensitivities, right? And using the right math and the right tool, the scientists mapped the visible spectrum into a simple 2D graph, which is called the CIE chromaticity diagram. And this is the CIE chromaticity diagram, and CIE stands for Commission Internationale de l'Éclairage. I think Lionel can pronounce that better than me. Excuse my French. But it just means International Commissions on Illuminations, right? And the color are mapped on the X and Y axis. And the visible colors, or what we call the spectrum locus, is the one mapped within this horseshoe shape diagram here. So all the visible colors is inside this shape, and the other not visible colors are outside of this shape, and it is indistinguishable from black, no matter how bright it is or no matter how intense it is. And if we are going to map this graph into 3D diagram, then the z-axis, the one that pointing right to us, will be the luminosity of the wavelength, right? So talking about the spectrum locus, it is not complete when we're not talking about the color space, right? And I think the most popular color space that we know and we use like most all the time is the sRGB color space. Notice that sRGB color space is just a small fractions, and it sits right in the middle of our spectrum locus. And sRGB color space also consists of the red, green, and blue primaries, but it is not able to represent all the visible colors. So it means that if there are any colors that exist outside of this triangle, it will not be able to be reproduced by the sRGB display. And most of the time, those color will be clipped, right? And in a very simple workflow, an image must have gone through at least 2 imaging systems, which interpret light and color differently than our eyes do. And a scene captured by a camera, when we are going to take an image, for example, the scene that we captured it is captured by a camera that has its own color space and has its own proprietary color science. And then we also need to display that certain scene on the display, which also has a different color space. So without systematic approach, a user then would just tweak the image based on his memory on the day, on the locations, to make the footage look just exactly on the day when it was captured. And that approach includes a lot of subjective guesswork. Now, color management is a method that provides alternative to that. And it is actually a method to preserve the perceptual accuracy of our images as it moves through multiple imaging systems, right? So it does so by using a controlled conversion between color spaces of various imaging devices in the pipeline. And having done this, we can ensure that the final viewing image best matches with what we saw on the scene the day it was captured. And color management actually allows you to focus more on the state of the image and less on the camera or the display technology. So if you want to focus more on the creative side, like I do, use color management in your workflow, right? So let me give you an example. I think all of us probably already have some experience dealing with log image, right? And when we have like a log image and we try to view that in our sRGB or Rec 709 monitor, we probably see a completely flat and desaturated image like this. And normally what we do first is to normalize our image, right? And this can be done by just simply tweaking the contrast and also the saturations of your image. Any tool can be used for that. For example, we can use lift gamma gain or the contrast control, adjusting the pivot, and also doing the saturations, ramping up the saturations. Well, nothing wrong with that. Although no matter how good it looks, sorry to say that this process is actually not color grading. It is like an improvisations of color management that rely heavily on the user subjective taste. In this case, my subjective taste. Now, using a color managed framework like ACES will allow you to bypass this process so that you won't have to deal with this, neutralizing the image, normalizing the image. And ACES is a color management framework, and it is a standardized way of transforming what camera saw into what our display can reproduce, while also providing us with an intermediate platform for doing our VFX and also doing our color correction works. And one thing that we need to understand is that ACES is all about accuracy and efficiency, and is not about looks and aesthetics, although it may also give you a certain how do you call it, very how do you call it, very subtle look. We'll go into that later, right? So I'll show you how to set up ACES later on. Let us go back to our presentations first. And now the case is like this. Sometimes when we are in the productions or in the post-productions, we are not just dealing with one type of footage. Sometimes when we are working with multiple cameras, and also if we included VFX in our project, there are plenty of color science, color space that we have to deal with, right? Sometimes when we are using RE camera, we will deal with log C footage, or if we are using Sony camera, we will deal with S-Log, for example, and not just S-Log. There are S-Log 1, S-Log 2, S-Log 3, and then also when we are having the VFX done in 3D app, this footage was also done in linear and using sRGB color space. So this sometimes creates confusions to us. And actually, this is also the considerations for the Academy, the same organizations that handed out Oscar. So the Academy came up with the solutions to unify color workflow under one color management framework. And the main objective is to create consistency. And with ACES, like Diego said back then, I mean, we've done presentations on ACES in last Demystifying Post-Productions webinar, I think last year, in November as well. And I think in that webinar, to quote Diego, the presenter, with ACES, it is like being in a global community where everyone speaks one language, right? So ACES unify all the sources in one color space, and from that one unified color space, you can then port your project everywhere to the display space that you wish. And please notice that ACES has been out since 2014, so ACES is not a new color management framework. So when working with ACES, there are two color spaces that you need to understand. The first one is ACES AP0, or the technical name, the standardized technical name would be the SMPTE ST2065-1. So if you just Google SMPTE ST2065-1, you will have all the technical specifications. You have all you will have the paper literally, and if you have the, how do you call it, the drive to read that, you can simply just Google that. And ACES AP0 is a wide gamut color space, and it is scene linear, and it is exceeding the spectrum of color that we can see, the spectrum locus. It is way much bigger than what human eyes can perceive. And the idea for that being so big is that you can future-proof your project. And ACES AP0 color space is actually a color space that you will not use for working. This is mainly used for archiving. It means that in the near future, if a display company came up with a bigger color space, the hope would be that the AP0 is still bigger and can still contain that color space within AP0. Now, if AP0 is not used for working, which color space then that we need to use for working inside ACES? And that is the AP1 color space. And that is represented by this purple line. So it is, if you see, it is quite the same size like Rec 2020 color space. And what you need to understand, AP1 has two different iterations. For VFX or 3D, there is ACES CG, stands for computer graphic. And this AP1 color space, the ACES CG, is linearly encoded. Meanwhile, in color grading, we have two different AP1 color space, and that is ACES CC and ACES CCT. And both of these color spaces is using exactly the same color space, AP1, but they are also same using the same log encoding, but they have a slightly different response. ACES CC is the first color space released by the Academy, but back then a lot of colorists, the colorist community, complained that it's very hard to lift the black point when we are using ACES CC. So getting your black point off 0 level will be very hard when you are working with ACES CC. And this trigger the Academy to release ACES CCT, and the T stands for toe. And using that, you can lift the black point easier compared to ACES CC. So if you're not familiar with toe, it's like the same toe and shoulder when you are drawing your curves. I can show you that later on. But now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is that when we are working in ACES, the recommended file sharing format is OpenEXR, and it is also standardized under SMPTE ST2065-4. And the catch here with EXR is that there are plenty of compression methods that you need to understand when you are working with OpenEXR. I think Lionel mentioned that he was working with DWAA on his compositions, but to get a better overview than that, you can simply visit this website that he provides. It's called duduth.com, and there are plenty of different, how do you call it, compression format that you can read, right? So that is OpenEXR, the standardized file for file sharing. And now let's see the bigger pictures of setting up ACES for your color corrections. Well, it is not really different like any other, how do you call it, workflow when you are working in 3D. ACES, generally, to enter ACES, generally, you need to provide your footage with an IDT. So you can use any type of footage, be it a camera footage, the one that you generate from your computer, or any drone footage or whatever. If you want to enter the ACES framework, you need an IDT. It's like when you're entering, when you want to go to a concert, you need to buy a ticket, right? Same like that. So IDT stands for Input Device Transforms. And what IDT is doing, it transforms any color space into ACES AP0 linear. Remember that big color space, the one that you use for archiving in ACES, AP0? Yes. IDT transform any color space into that big color space, the AP0 linear. And from there, from AP0, you will then need to specify your working color space, the AP1 color space. And in this case, since we are grading, we can select either ACCC or ACCCT. Both ACCC and ACCCT are AP1 color spaces, and they are lock encoded. If you are in 3D, however, you can use ACCCG. Now, from AP1, if we want to archive our project, save our project for a future use, we can save it back to AP0. But if we want to port it out, if we want to display or deliver our project, we need to go to display color space, right? And there where we need ODT, or output display transform. And what ODT is actually doing, it is transforming your footage from AP0 linear to the various display color space. So for instance, if you want to deliver to Rec 709 or to TV and broadcast, you can use, you can set your ODT into Rec 709. Meanwhile, if you want to deliver to cinema delivery, you can use P3 D65, or if you just want to upload your project to YouTube, for example, and to be consumed mostly on computer display screen, then you can simply set your ODT to sRGB. The thing that you really need to know with ODT is that there is a small process in the ODT itself that happens in the background, and that is called the RRT, or Reference Rendering Transform. That's the technical name, but the simple, how do you call it? The very simple concept is that when you're applying ODT, it is also applying a filmic curve. So it makes your image more contrasty. There's history about that, but let's not go into there because we want to save our time, and let's see how ACES works in action in Resolve, right? But just understand that RRT is happening in the background when you're setting your ODT, and this is the process that you cannot bypass. It happens in the ODT, right? So that is the simple pipeline of ACES. Enter ACES using IDT, and you'll be in AP0. And to work in ACES, select your AP1 color space, and then from there, you can port it out to any display color space using your ODT. Now, let's jump into Resolve. Now we have this image that we already hand grade previously, and nothing wrong with that. But as I said previously, this is not color grading, right? This is just like improvised color management. So how do we use ACES then? So let me reset the node grade. We can set ACES in several different ways inside DaVinci Resolve. The first things that you can use, that you can do inside Resolve, is that you can set ACES in the project level, in the project settings. And you can go to the project settings by going to File and Project Settings, or Shift 9, or simply just press this cogwheel button over here, and you'll be in the project settings. Now, to get ACES set up for DaVinci Resolve, you need to go to the color management. And notice that the default settings for your color science is DaVinci YRGB. And if you want to use ACES, you can simply you can simply select the AP1 color space that you want to work with. And in this case, you can choose either ACES-CC or ACES-CCT, right? And right below that, you will have the ACES versions. You can use the previous versions, but I always how do you call it, suggest you, it is better to use the newest versions, and in this case ACES 1.3. Having speak the ACES 1.3, I need to point you out that yeah, ACES 1.3 is available, and there is a big how do you call it, issues that they are tackling with ACES 1.3, namely the gamut compressions. I'll show you that later on, but for now, just simply understand that ACES 1.3 available, and it's awesome, right? So ACES 1.3, right? And now here where you can set your IDT, or ACES input transform. And if you're just using one type of camera, you can select your input transform here in this list. But if you have like mixed camera in your project and you don't know which one to use, you can do it later, right? So at the moment, we can simply just put it into no input transform. And then we can set our ODT into Rec 709 because I have calibrated display to Rec 709. And we can press save, right? And now, here in this clip, we need to set our IDT. And to set our IDT, I've done this previously, the Resolve, remember that apparently. So to set our IDT, you can simply just right click to your clip, on your clip, and select ACES input transform, and select which camera you are working with. And in this case, it's Sony camera. And you can select which type of log file you're working with, be it slog3 or slog2 or slog1. In this case, it is an slog3 footage. So that is how you can set up ACES in DaVinci project settings. But that is not the only way where you can set up ACES inside DaVinci Resolve, right? So the thing is, like, sorry, I think I wind it out a little bit. I'm going off track a little bit. So what I want to say is that sometimes when you are working in ACES, some of your beloved tools is not really working correctly. And in this case, for example, I like to use Magic Bullet Suite and for my grading. And for example, if I want to use Mojo, and if I'm dropping it, I am dropping Mojo inside ACES because all my nodes here in the clip and then the timeline level is inside ACES. And simply, you need to understand that what Mojo is actually doing, it is taking any footage, either video footage or Rec 709 or sRGB or a log footage, and it is outputting your footage into sRGB color space. Well, that doesn't really work, right? Because when we are in ACES, we should stay in ACES, and then until the very last, we need our ODT to go into the color space. So how do I use Mojo, or how do I use Magic Bullet Suites when I am working in ACES? I'll show you that later on. But for now, I would like to go to the questions. Is there any questions? Let me check the questions. There's a question from Peter. Does Magic Bullet work in Fusion Studio yet? The team is looking on it, Peter. I hope it will be running in Fusions really soon. But at the moment, the team is looking at it. Thank you. Right. So let's go back into setting up ACES inside DaVinci Resolve. We've set our project. We set ACES in with our project settings, right? Using the color managements. Now there is another way to set ACES inside DaVinci Resolve, and that is just simply setting up ACES in our node tree, right? And to do that, we can reset our color management back into DaVinci YRGB and hit save, right? And now let me show you how we can set ACES in the node editor. So if I just create another node here, I'll create a tree node. Remember, to enter ACES, we need our IDT, right? And to get out from ACES and how do you call it, map our footage into our display color space, we need an ODT. And here, if we are setting up our IDT and ODT perfectly, means that we will be able to work in ACES when we are using the node in between. So to set up our IDT using the Resolve node, well, we can use the ACES transform plugin, and it is come natively inside DaVinci Resolve. So there's no plugin that you need to download and install it separately. It is perfectly, how do you call it, running perfectly in Resolve and well optimized for Resolve. And yeah, let's us just drop the ACES transform into our IDT and our ODT. Now, we will need to set up our IDT, and to do so, we can open our effects panel, and again, we can select the ACES version that we want to work with. And in this case, the ACES 1.3. And we need to inform Resolve what type of footage that we are working with. And in this case, it is Sony S-Log3. And notice that now it looks nuclear hot, but nothing wrong with that because we haven't set our output transform yet. Now, instead of setting it into our Rec 709, our display transform, what we can do here, we can set it so that it is going to ACES AP1 color space. And in this case, it is ACES CC. And having this set up, now we can go to our ODT and reverse this setup, right? What we can do is that in input transform, we can select ACES CC, and in our output, and by doing successfully going into ACES with our IDT, and then going out of ACES with our ODT. And here in the middle, we can use our tool in ACES AP1. So for example, if we do any highlight adjustment, for example, let's see, yeah, we have a clipping highlight, and if we want to just bring the highlight down a little bit, this is done in ACES AP1. And now the same questions about Magic Bullet Suite will be interesting to be revisited, right? Now, since like tools like Mojo, for example, it is outputting any footage into sRGB color space, how can I use Mojo when I'm working with ACES? Well, the answer to that is that you can use Mojo after the output display transform. It means that you can use Mojo in the Rec 709 color space. So for example, if I am dropping Mojo and putting it after the output display transform and setting my footage to video, I can use it perfectly, and it's running perfectly. And because this is what Mojo is expecting, it is expecting either sRGB or Rec 709 or log footage, and then it will transform your footage into sRGB, right? Now the question is, like, what if I want to use Mojo or Magic Bullet Film? Because Magic Bullet Film is also the same. Let me reset this. Magic Bullet Film also doing exactly the same thing like Mojo. It is taking any type of footage, either video or log, and then it outputted into Rec 709 or sRGB color space. You know, right? Now the question is, what if I want to use Mojo or Film inside ACES framework? And to do so, we need to use both of that tools inside in this middle node, right? And if you really like Mojo, because what Mojo is actually doing, it is taking all the skin tones and put it into warmth and the how do you call it? This locations over here near the eye bar. So if, for example, if I am showing the skin tone, where is that? So skin tone indicator. So if you're using Mojo, all your skin tone will be pushed here and all the background color will be pushed into the opposite directions. So it is having like those complementary color kind of setup. So what you can do is that you can use Mojo or Magic Bullet Film inside looks when you want to work inside ACES, right? So in looks, there is this tool that is called the color handling. And what it is doing, it is transforming your gamma to the ACES CC. And here in your output, you can also revert it back same as input. So you're going from ACES gamma back to same as input, right? And you can preview it in sRGB, or you can simply disable it if you don't want to. Now, this is not perfect, but the team is looking on it. We know that sometimes this is not matching what my display is previewing, right? If you see carefully. But that is because look is only transforming the gamma, but not the color space. The color space transformations is handled by the host app, and in this case, will still be in ACES CC. So I can use Mojo here, and in Mojo I can use my presets, whatever I like, and I can also use Magic Bullet Film. And here what's nice is that I can separate the film negative and the film print, right? So that is using Magic Bullet Mojo or Magic Bullet Film with looks inside ACES. And now once you confirm the look, I drop Magic Bullet Film, by the way, I'm only using Mojo. Once you confirm the look, you can still adjust the strength of the look. And let me reset that. Now, my personal favorite working this way is that by setting up ACES using this node structure over here, I still have the possibility to work in the camera color space. So for example, this footage was shot in S-Log3, and I have the possibility to work in the camera color space. So for example, if I want to create keys or qualifications, I can do that before the input device transform. Or what I like the most is that I can use Magic Bullet looks before I'm going into ACES. And the way I'm using Magic Bullet looks before going into ACES is that to use the lighting tools to mimic the lighting that happens in the scene when the footage was shot, for example. So I can tell Magic Bullet Looks to work in S-Log3, for example, because this was shot in S-Log3. Set it same as input, the output. And here, I like to use tools like haze and flare because it's physically mimicking the how do you call it, the real haze and flare that happens in the real world. You can adjust the spillage, and once I confirm, I have this nice and beautiful haze baked into my footage, and then it is transformed by the IDT into ACES. And here I can work with my footage in ACES. If I want to create a looks on top of that, I can do that in ACES. And then I still have the possibility to either do another thing after the transformations if I wish to. So working using a node structure when setting up ACES is way much more convenient in my opinion, but it depends. It really depends on the user case. Like everything in post-productions, experimentations is key. And yeah, you just need to find out the best workflow that works for you, right? And let's go into the, how do you call it, the new ACES fix, the Gamut compressions, right? ACES is optimized for a natural color, right? Like skin tone or foliage, things that is natural, right? And sometimes things can get very rough as we introduce like synthetic color, like synthetic things like neon light and like laser light, because those light sources, if you remember the spectral power distributions. I'm sorry, there's a typo. It's not special power distributions, it's spectral power distributions. And yeah, I think I lost my track. ACES is optimized for natural color, right? Like skin tone and foliage and so on. But if we start to introduce things like neon and laser, which have very narrow wavelength and very intense, things start to get very rough. Like for example, we have a scene which is lit by this, how do you call it, a neon blue light. And normally in ACES, this color, since it is a very intense blue color, and normally it is like, it is outside of the AP1 color space. And most of the time, when we have that situations, we got gamut clipping. So for example, if I am setting up my ACES using the node structure, and this is nothing new, we learned that previously. I'm setting up with my ACES transform. This is a red clip, and here I can just select red, white gamut. Come on. Where is it? There you go. Red, white gamut, log3g10. And I want to work in ACES, CCT. And from ACES, CCT, back to my display color space, right? And I have ACES working color space here in the middle, AP1. Now, as you can see, we have this clipping over here on this doll. And you can also see that in our vector scope, right? We have like this massive magenta and blue clipping color informations. Now, previously in ACES 1.2 and below, there are several workaround that you can do for this case of scenario, this type of scenario. That is by, for example, reducing the saturations in the, reducing the saturations in the very bright highlight, like so. And as you can see, I can bring that color information, compress that color information back in the vector scope. That is one workaround. And also, I think the Academy also provide us with the ACES LMT. That is also doing the same stuff. And we just need to simply to drag and drop it to one of our node, right? But now in ACES 1.3, we don't need to do that because we have gamut compressions in the ACES transform. So in the, if I disable this, if you are setting ACES in your color management, there's also option to use reference gamut compressions just by simply clicking that options, right? It is very simple. And if we're using the node structure to set up our ACES, we have this drop down. We can use as ACES reference gamut compressions, and voila, it fixed the issue, right? But hey, we have another one that is ACES parametric gamut compressions. So if you want to have an extra control to how you compress your gamut, I think Nick Shaw talked about the ACES compressions in ACES Central, and this is like really technical. All the mathematical formula and all that, it's all beyond me, and I don't think I can how do you call it, explain that better than the person himself. So if you want to check how ACES gamut compressions works, please visit ACES Central, and under working group, there is a gamut compressions working group that you can just follow. But the idea is that they simplify all the mathematical and technical stuff and just provide us with this very easy drop down that we can just simply use. So if you want to have more control, you can use the parametric gamut compressions, and now you can simply adjust which area that you want to compress more, and you also have the options to do the roll off. So that is the ACES gamut compressions. And yeah, now let's go back to the scene that was provided by Lionel. And this scene was done in ACES CG. So let me reset everything. Right. As you can see, it is better than the, as you can already see in the previous sessions, that ACES is, when you work with ACES in the 3D, it shows a better result compared to the linear sRGB workflow. But the thing is, like here, if you watch your vector scope, we have a very how do you call it, rich color in our footage, and we need to transform that into ACES while retaining all the color informations that we have. So let's set up our ACES workflow, and we can do that simply by using the same method, and that is by using ACES transform, right? And I can just drop my ACES transform in the first node, and I'll name it IDT, and at the end I'll name it ODT, right? And let me take a still before we are transforming to ACES. Now I can inform ACES that this footage was done on ACES CG. And that is by simply selecting those input from this massive list, right? Oops. We have ASYS-CG input, and then we want to work in ASYS CCT or CC. Why do we have lock encoding for ASYS AP1 in our color grading suite? The answer is that all these tools that we have in our color grading app, they are optimized for lock encoding. So sometimes when we're working in linear, it's not very comfortable. Sometimes your tools that you know very well, they can behave really odd when working in a linear color space. That's why the AP1 in ASYS CCT and ASYS CC is lock encoded. Right, we have set our image from ASYS-CG into ASYS CCT. And in the ODT, we can reverse that. We will set ASYS CCT as our input transform. And now we can put it to Rec 709. Right. Now we have, this is before ASYS, this is just ASYS-CG, and now it is ASYS-CG brought into the ASYS CCT and then correctly transformed into Rec 709, right? Now, I don't think we need to do, how do you call it? Comparison. But what nice is that, let me save this and let's do the comparison right after this. Right, if you check, is that we still have, in the vector scope, these boxes over here are what we call the safe limit for delivery, right? So we can still see that our red is exceeding the safe level. And then our magenta is also exceeding that. And our blue is also exceeding that. Now, we can also use ASYS reference gamut compressions in our IDT, and it kind of fixed the problem. If I grab my, if I compare it, wait a second, sorry, with the selected still, where is it? There you go. Notice that we have a different type of saturations level in our bunny, right? So if I turn it off, so this is the case where it is advisable to use the parametric gamut compressions. And here you can play around with the how do you call it? The default value is the one based on the reference gamut compressions. And here you can further tweak the value that you want, right? So for example, if I want to compress the magenta more, I can just use that. I can compress my yellow threshold over there, and I can set up my magenta limit like so, and the cyan limit, and do the cyan something like that. Now I can, how do you call it, interfere or adjust the reference gamut compressions and adjust the control to further tweak my image to better suit my how do you call it, my aesthetics, let's say that. Alrighty, so that is reference gamut compressions in ASYS 1.3. It is available as a simple, how do you call it, options when you're setting up ASYS-CC. ASYS-CC or ASYS-CCT. It is available as a simple checkbox in the project settings, or if you notice in the project settings, if you're using ASYS, there is no, how do you call it, the parametric reference gamut compressions. If you want to use the parametric gamut compressions, it is advisable to set up your ACES using the node structure over here. So that is setting up ACES inside DaVinci Resolve. And I hope this inspires you to experimenting around with ACES in DaVinci Resolve. And let's check the questions. Sorry, by the way, today I'm hosting and then also I'm presenting, and how do you call it? I'm joined by Lionel, but he doesn't have the camera and microphone to join us because he's on the job at the moment. And actually today we supposed to have another guest, but also he cannot make it because of another job. So yeah, I hope that I can fill in quite nicely about the topic. Let me check the questions. Oh, there are pretty. Okay, there is one question from Andreas. Did I understand correctly that currently there is not an accurate preview of Magic Bullet looks within DaVinci when working in ACES? Yes. Yeah. Sadly, yes, because Magic Bullet looks only transforming the gamma of your footage, but it is not transforming the color space. That's why you see the discrepancy between the how do you call it, the preview in DaVinci Resolve compared to Magic Bullet. So let me drop in Magic Bullet looks, and let me open Magic Bullet looks here. Right. So let me turn off the sRGB, and this is supposed to be in ACES CG. And as you can see, we also don't have ACES CG in the dropdown. So let's use looks in the ACES pipeline. All right, so let's set it to ACES CC. And here, same as input. And when we are not previewing in sRGB, notice that we are previewing in ACES CC. That's why it's very flat and desaturated. Notice that preview button is previewing in ACES in sRGB, and we are putting out our footage to Rec 709, and there are like a slight difference between that. And on top of that, what you notice is that we are just changing the gamma and not changing the color space. That's why we have like this discrepancy. Now, sometimes this can be an issue for you if you start to play around with other tools like color correction tools, if you want to see the preview inside Magic Bullet looks, because you cannot see how it looks in your display before you confirming that, right? Now, I have a workaround for that. If you have another minute or so, that is by using color space transform. And here we're using ACCT, and since in Magic Bullet looks we also only have ACCC, let us just switch to ACCC quickly. And you know what you can do is another sandwich, like the sandwich that we create here, like our ACES sandwich. We'll create another color space conversion sandwich. And here I have another conversions within transformations. And here, since Magic Bullet looks running perfectly in linear sRGB, it means that after setting our IDT, we are in ACES, we can quickly jump out of ACES and go to linear sRGB, apply our looks, and then go back to ACES again if we want to use Magic Bullet looks, for example. So here, input color space, we can set up to sRGB. No. That's wrong, Max. That's wrong. I'm in ACCC, right? Oh, sorry, guys. So ACES, ACCC, and then quickly go to sRGB and linear. Where's linear? There you go. And from here, I go from sRGB, linear, back to ACES, and ACES CC, that is. So if I am selecting this too, okay, there's a tone mapping going on. We should not use tone mapping there. Let's just turn it to none. So now if I select this, you see, if I'm turning it off and on, there's no difference whatsoever, right? Now this is a perfect setup to set our magic bullet looks, actually. So I can just use looks, drag and drop it, and in this middle sandwich, if I am pressing edit look and selecting linear, same as input. Now, that is a bug. I don't know why it's happening. Yeah, normally it would work like this. I have to check it out. I have to check it out. Normally, I use this type of setup to counter this issue, but apparently it doesn't work in this way. What is happening here? Improving it linear. Wait a second. Yeah. So let me reset that again. Apply looks. Let's see. Yep, doesn't work. Yeah, we found an issue, guys. So yeah, apparently it doesn't work. So bear with me a little bit. Maybe it's the nature of the synthetic color. Let us use this, how do you call it? Footage, for example. And we are in ACCC to Rec 709. So like, for example, if I'm using the same setup, dropping looks in the middle, and using color space transform in between. And from here, this is ACES, ACES CC. I want to go to sRGB. Oh, wait a second. I think I know what I did wrong, guys. Previously, I was using linear, right? So let us check with sRGB Gamma 2.2. And this is sRGB and Gamma 2.2 back into ACES CC and no tone map whatsoever. So sanity check. All right, that's supposed to work. There's no difference whatsoever. And now let us start looks. Hopefully it works this time. And it's supposed to be sRGB back to same as input. Weird. So it still doesn't work. All right. Apparently it still doesn't work. But normally, that would be the recommended, how do you call it? I would recommend to use a sandwich of color space transform. So for example, let's see what happens if we are using Mojo. Because Mojo transform everything into sRGB Gamma 2.2. Yeah, it works with Mojo. But yeah, that's probably the things that I have to check with a on myself, how do you call it, on my own time, and get back to you when I found the solution for that. But normally that would be the, how do you call it, my recommended um, workaround is to quickly bypass aces, go back to the color space where looks is expecting, and then from there going back to aces. Right. The preview was none. Maybe switch to sRGB. I did, Andreas, and it still doesn't work. Right. And yeah, let's get in touch, Andreas. Simply email me. You can simply email me and at Maxon at training@maxon.net, and let's how do you call it? Let's play the detective work, and let's see what we can find out from that. All right. So I think I'm running out of time already. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending the webinar. And next sessions, let me give you overview about the next sessions. Next sessions is also very important if you are working with color. And next session, we will talk about monitoring color. So what type of reference monitor that you really need to work with, you need to have when you are working with color, what is the best settings, what is the terms and jargons, everything that you need to know about the reference monitor. And on that day, Diego will join us and explain the options of the reference monitor, what's available in the market. And I hope to see you there next week with Diego. So if you're like me, curious about the reference monitor, well, it is a never-ending topic. Please, I expect to see you in the next sessions. All right. And again, the recording of these sessions will be uploaded to YouTube shortly, and it will be in Maxon Training Team. And again, if you want to do some certifications, be it a where is it, certifications, learn certifications, yeah, there you go, maxon.net certifications. There's a free elementary knowledge test that you can use as a memory jogger if you want to test yourself, test your knowledge about Maxon products. It's free of charge, and there are 2 Cinema 4D comprehensive certifications program if you would like to. And to check the future events, simply go to maxon.net/events. And yeah, don't forget to check the compressions of the compression method of the EXR files. And if you haven't get your free T-shirt, get that free T-shirt. It's available in the app. How do you call it? In the handout sections of the app. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm very pleased for being here to be able to present this to you. And I hope these presentations will inspire you to play around with ACES in your workflow. So thank you very much, everyone. Until next week, see ya and take care.